Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming you all on International Affairs. Today is August the 6th of 2026. There is some massive developments that we see over the week up until today, all of which we will be discussing today in today's program, being scheduled at the SATV's Gulshan studio. Before we step into the discussion, let me introduce my panel. Here in the studio, I have senior journalist and columnist Khaja Mainuddin. He's of course coming in to this in his very first appearance in the program. I welcome you on as well. We have Norman Floyd Barnes, our geopolitical correspondent, joining from Washington, District of Columbia. I want to begin today's developments with Norman. There is a shooting incident that has happened in North Carolina as authorities confirm multiple fatalities and one injured in a mass shooting. This is in the location of North Carolina in the city of Prospect Hill. More on that I want to ask from Norman and how this situation has developed. U.S. President Donald Trump is claiming that U.S. has a massive munitions stockpile and warrants of jail for those who will leak this kind of data. And Donald Trump is also saying he prefers a deal with Iran, but warrants military action remains as one of the top priorities to him. I want to pass it to Norman Floyd Barnes. What are some of the updates that you have for us, Norman? A very good morning to you.
Good morning from Washington. Yes, President Trump has stated that a deal is near, but Iran is also stating that they have a deal, and it appears that someone will have to make a deal. Right now, the situation is that the Iranians and the people from the government from Haman is close to making a deal about the passageway of the strait. And that deal will probably include some type of a toll. They're saying that there's never going to be a situation where the strait will go back to a free and clear passageway. The United States is saying that they are totally opposed to any type of tolls for the area. And the Iranians also mentioning that the U.S. will have to leave and clear the blockade of the area. So that is causing problem right now. Apparently there's a solution on the table, but one party will have to, as we say, eat crow, and basically they will have to submit to a plan that will create an opportunity for the strait to open up and the end of this war. Yes, there's still a conversation about the nuclear enrichment in Iran, but that is a different situation when we're dealing right now. Right now, we're dealing with global economy, the stranglehold that strait is holding on the region, and the effects it's going to have on the Red Sea. So both of them are still the same. So whatever happens with the strait will probably manifest over to the Red Sea, and it will have a real effect on exactly what's going on in Saudi Arabia. And moving on up, it will cross over and deal with the situation with Gaza, the Israelis, and Lebanon. So it is all one big move. So the chess game is starting right now to see who will make the first move and who will basically retreat back and continue doing what we're doing. So right now, there's an opportunity to make some significant inroads. Where these inroads go, we don't know. And of course, we don't know how long it's going to last. It's sustainable. But the issue is now back, like I stated before, the solution is in the region. It will have to be resolved by the players, the neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood who lives and work and breathe in the Gulf states. That has to be, my opinion, that has to be the solution. Any outside impact and influence by the United States will be considered, but it's not going to be the dominant source on what happens. So right now, it's back to the players and the people who are most affected by this, directly affected by this, and has an impact on how we move forward in the world. So it's good that the conversation has started. Let's see what happens in the next 72 hours in regards to that. Of course, Donald Trump, our president, has stated that he's prepared to have more military attacks, more military pressure on the region if he can't get his way.
Right. As I make of Norman Floyd Barnes' statements, a very excellent opener to the program, to the discussion today. If he cannot get his way, as Norman ended while saying those lines, it is important to note how the U.S. president is changing the narrative, changing the rhetoric when it comes to Middle East. I want to focus regarding the last 24 hours as we see in the Strait of Hormuz, turning to Khaja Mainuddin. I welcome you onto the program as well. You were hearing Norman Floyd Barnes in the opening and how US and Iran has been trading this war of narratives as we see 15 days of short confrontation, and now this narrative play is going on all throughout this week. The U.S. Central Command forces have redirected 48 commercial vessels, disabled 2 and boarded 2 according to data coming from the U.S. Central Command. So it's very frankly easy to say that the Strait of Hormuz remains contested area, as well as Donald Trump mentioning that there has to be some part of a deal. Iran is confirmed that they do not want to be any part of a deal, and both sides seem to be ready for escalation. I want to pass it to you, sir. How do you see these recent developments?
In fact, the confrontation or the conflict between the Iran and the American and Israel simultaneously is not an easy, there is no easy solution for the crisis, because Donald Trump in the first place was instigated by Israel, as evidences say, instigated by Israel to join this war, to start attacking Iran. But at the same time, the military actions in the last few months, even during the peace talks, during the ceasefire talks, we see that kind of attacks on Iran simultaneously. Right. This is an American military mind that they applied. They applied during the Vietnam War, if you recall, in those days. There was significant improvement in the talks between Mr. Lee Duc-thu and Henry Kissinger in the 70s. But simultaneously, there was massive bombing on Vietnam. And President Nixon said that this is part of the pressure that needs to be exerted on Vietnam so that there is acceleration in the peace process. I don't think that's a very right approach. But somehow this comes out of a dominant psyche that, right, that Donald Trump wants to dictate the term in the peace talks.
Right.
But Iran is also a very old country, quite an old civilized country. In fact, President Nixon once said that America has twin pillars on the two sides of the Persian Gulf in foreign policy, American foreign policy. Right. Two pillars. One is Saudi Arabia, the other is Iran. But one of the twin pillars was broken in 1979 when we saw the Iranian Revolution. So since the Iranian Revolution, America is in fact has been struggling to deal with the Iranian leaders. And in most cases, the arrogance that American leaders showed didn't actually work. Donald Trump is not just another president, he's also a businessman. He has a business mind. He said recently that he will provide security guarantee to the Arab allies, provided they give him money. So instead of thinking geopolitically, he's thinking of it in terms of money. So that's one thing. But since Donald Trump was instigated by Israel to join the war, I don't think it's a very easy option for Donald Trump to come to the peace deal easily, because Israel is not satisfied. Israel is not happy with whatever outcome that has come so far in the war. A direct peace talks and deal between Iran and America is not what Israel wants. Israel wants complete destruction and surrender of the Arab countries, and of course Iran as a formidable country in the Middle East, which also has proxies around Israel, Hezbollah, Houthis, and you see the Iranian influence throughout the Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz in Gulf, and also Bab al-Mandeb, the two vital war routes that are vital for us, all the countries around the world, for transportation of oil and energy. So I think there may be a deal, hopefully, but it's a very difficult option for both the parties. And Iran is ready to pay the high price. Iran is ready to pay the high price, even destruction of Iran, but I don't think they will surrender.
Of course, excellent statements from Khaja Mainuddin, categorizing all the issues that we really need to discuss. One of them being that Iran will really not surrender, will have having its leader decapitated in the very first day of the war. Historians will definitely assume many years down the line that this was the foothold of another world war escalation. And that is exactly what I want to talk about with Norman Floyd Barnes. In the U.S., there has been major policy decision changes as well. We look towards the state of Michigan, in which a Democratic Senate nominee, Abdul El Sayed, has won his seat. And because of that, Donald Trump has given infuriating, inflammatory remarks, saying that various remarks regarding this very person, calling him a radical left socialist and a communist. Very similar remarks that he had made initially to the mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani. So this is a huge change, a precursor to the midterm elections. A Democrat nominee had won his seat in Michigan. Just to ask you, Norman, how do you feel about this? Is this the winds of change? Is this how change is going to come hit the current administration? Norman.
Well, you mentioned use the word the winds of change. Yes, the winds are changing. The winds are creating stress. As you see, when comments are made by the Trump administration about a political candidate in a political district, it has an effect on exactly how things go. So by him attacking, making comments, or even making reference to the situation in Michigan, it shows that things are about to change. This is not just a one-time hit. This is a process. We are in a momentum, a journey, a transition of change. There will be a lot of impact. It will have a domino effect across the United States, and largely because of the policies of the current administration, how they doing things, how they presenting things, and how they taking the greater than thou attitude in regards to dealing with internal issues in the United States. The people here do not digest that well. They will exercise their legal right, which is to vote, to basically to affect change. There will be changes, and these changes will balance at minimum, if not change, how our Congress govern this country. So hold on, it's about to happen. You're seeing these several states are giving you a taste, a preview exactly what's going to happen in November in regards to the change. So the Trump administration is trying to basically head that off, trying to get comments in where they can, trying to be effective, trying to change the narrative. But the narrative is already written, and the winds are blowing.
Right. And as I make of Norman Floyd Barnes' statement, just to add on here, that Abdul El Sayed was asked about his position on the military funding for foreign nations, and which he said that unconditional military aid for any country, including Israel, Egypt, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, he is taking a very opposing stance on this very factor. And he said that he does not want to fund a foreign military that does genocide, apartheid, or has taken the U.S. into a war that they do not need to fight, stating that and adding that the U.S. tax dollars should be spent on healthcare, school infrastructure in the mainland. So those are some common attributes that see eye to eye with Zohran Mamdani as well. Just before I can go on a break, I want to ask Norman, how do you see this new leader? He is definitely looking for the plight of common Michigan people. Just your comment before I can go for a break.
What you're seeing is a model, an example of the leadership that the American public is seeking. He's just one of many that will emerge from this process. So you'll see basically the theme about take care of America first. We have things we need to deal with. We need to take care of the basic stuff, health care, food, water, care. Our children, our schools, our education. We need to take care of these basic things before we try to control what's happening on another side of the world. If you can't control your house, how in the world are you expected to control the neighborhood and your community? It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Right. Community first should be the very first example. With that being stated, it's time to take a very short commercial break. Afterwards, we'll be looking at some of the issues and creations that stem from the U.S. CIA is establishing a secret task force inside Cuba as the nation comes in from a load shedding crisis, another blackout that has hit Cuba because of the energy situation. We will be taking a short commercial break. I request my audience to stay tuned for more on this very program. Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsul Alam Panta.
I don't see an easy resolution to this because every slight deviation from the plan,
opening an open war conflict with them.
Testing nuclear missiles.
Russia's announcement of these supposedly successful testing.
Special and exclusive footage that is being played on SATV screen.
Really coming to terms with Hamas.
Damage estimated between this entire issue.
President Trump is expected to hold bilateral talks.
Preserving biodiversity and tackling climate change.
We cannot protect the planet before we negotiate peace.
Where is it going? Is it understanding the needs of its people before the needs of this global world?
For China to come to agreement,
They will face better projects.
with President Xi of China and President Lee of South Korea.
Trump's White House that is in favor of these things.
Welcoming our viewers back on International Affairs. We are joined in the studio with senior journalist Khaja Mainuddin, as well as our senior geopolitical correspondent is also on the line from Washington, Norman Floyd Barnes. As before the break, I was talking about a secret task force set up by the Central Intelligence Agency of the U.S. Let me read out the story before I can ask some of the questions. Has secretly established a task force inside Cuba to intensify the pressure on the Cuban government and expand intelligence operations targeting the island. Now, Cuba has been a matter of discussion for weeks and months before today, as we see that they are dealing and reeling with an energy shortage. Much of the day goes without electricity. So that really, it's not a loss of life that is important, but sustaining a life that has become very important in Havana of Cuba. The CIA, of course, declined to comment to the newspaper, the New York Times. Just want to ask Khaja Mainuddin, the story that I just said regarding Cuba is one of notions, as well as Donald Trump's stance on communism. Michigan's El Said has been the latest person to be vindicated of communism. So I want to ask you the priorities of the U.S., how you see the upcoming midterms. What is the feeling on the ground? Democrats are now once again very lively, very active in governance of the U.S. How do you see this?
I think Donald Trump and his party understood that midterm may be a crisis for the Republican Party. And historically, there is always a crisis of the ruling camp in the midterm. And foreign policy matters a lot in American, even domestic policy. And when domestic policy is in crisis, though usually the president wants to make it up by success in foreign policy. So Cuba may be that kind of case. But Cuba is a very soft spot for America since the 60s. We remember the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 that overwhelmed the whole world. Even today, that the world was close to the nuclear war. So Cuba, the name Cuba is essentially related with Soviet-American Cold War and hostility between the two sides over the decades. So since Cuba is still not in the American pocket, so I see that this is a problem that had affected the American psyche over the years. Maybe part of that psyche, Donald Trump is trying to gain some success in Cuba, as Donald Trump is doing in case of Iran, of course instigated by Israel. In fact, since I'm a journalist, more often than not, I do have more questions than answers. So while you're discussing with Norman the issue, I was wondering what kind of impact this Iran war may have on the upcoming midterm elections if there is a peace deal and if there is no peace deal. So, so that will also impact the American politics. So I think that is why American president is now shuffling and reshuffling his options to make up for the losses or damage that he has done in the Middle East, and by overwhelming the Cuban people with that kind of the stories.
Right.
If we can gain from the process.
Norman, our guest in the studio is willing to ask you this very question. Khaja Mainuddin, wanting to know how you feel about the midterms and its effects and cause and effect with the Iran war. Your opinion will be helpful. Norman.
Yes, my opinion is basically the situation has already started. I'm sad to say that if the strait opens or if the strait closes, the elections will still go on. And the mindset of the people here in the United States has already been made. Yes, okay, a deal could be made, but we know that deal is very unsustainable because of factors with Israel and other things in the region. Until these issues are addressed, it's just a day-by-day situation. One day it will be open, the next day it will be closed. There will be ships go through, there will be ships sunk. There will be issues come back about the prices of oil going up. So the situation is not the decision to make a deal is not going to change the results, the narrative. The narrative's already gone, the damage is already done, and people have decided already exactly how they're going to move on it regarding the government, how they're going to let the government know that they are very displeased with their performance so far, and they need to make changes. The changes are coming is basically we're going to have new blood. They're looking to have new blood come in, both Democrat and Republican, new blood, because the old traditional process is no longer sustainable for where we need to go in the future. There need to be new relationships. They need to be fresh blood. They need to have a new narrative, a new conversation on how we relate to each other. Until this happens, we will have the same old thing going on. We cannot move forward with the current situation we have with our leadership. Our leadership is basically needs to have a injection of new life. They need to have a new way of thinking. The current way of thinking will lead us into more and more situations like we into right now in 26. There will be no changes. There will be more increased situation unless we have a drastic change in that. And so the people are now realizing they have to do that. The people have to make a change. They have to make a decision on exactly what's going on. And we need to get back to what we think is important. And that is first, we need to take care of the home. The home front need to be taken care of. The people need to be taken care of. We have people who still do not have medical coverage. We have people who still do not have meals to eat. We have people who have to make decisions, do I pay the mortgage or do I get my medicine? We have people who basically don't know what they're going to do tomorrow. They're living day to day. And they attribute this to the decisions made by the current administration and our current politicians that have been in office for a long time. They have not improved the situation. They have basically decimated the situation and created what we in now. That's the belief of the American people. That belief is a global belief. Most countries are in that same situation. They're dealing with that. All the current problem is based on the leadership that we have in place. They are not thinking about the future. They do not understand that you have to include the people in your decisions. You can't make decisions and then tell the people what you did. It does not work very well, and particularly with the new generation. The new generation will protest. They will uprise, and they will effectively have change. With the advent of artificial intelligence, communication, information is out there. Intelligence is out there. What's going on? This is a global thing. So Hopefully, there will be the positive side, be a wake-up call for our leaders to understand they have to be more in tune to what's going on in their jurisdictions and deal with that. We have issues to deal with. We have internal issues, and we have issues with nature we have neglected to deal with. And so now all of these things are coming to term. We're going to have to deal with that. When you neglect something, it comes up later. Now things are now coming to the point. Things that we have neglected or took for granted and not addressed. Even with the situation in the Middle East, these issues are not new. These things has been suppressed, and allowed. It comes to a situation where it can no longer be tolerated on a global sense, and things has to change, and our leaders have to adapt or be removed.
Right. Interesting statements coming from Norman Floyd Barnes, really covering up the generational issues that we see today. When a group of youngsters be called a cockroach, they stood up in protest. That is just only one example I am using. However, there was some footage of the latest blackout in Cuba. Really, the livelihoods of people are at stake. Neglecting various duties, as Norman mentioned, is really the foundation of how problems may arise in the future. Exactly what I want to talk about with Khaja Mainuddin. You know, Israel, as you were mentioning very effectively, it is a war between Israel and Iran that US has participated in. Right. That is what analysts from around the world usually say. As we now see that Israel is considering additional military strikes in southern Lebanon as its army prepares for further escalation, according to an Israeli media outlet, that despite ongoing indirect negotiations between the two sides in Rome, such an order was given. We also know that the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, is in recess right now, as they will also have their elections in October, just a month before the US midterm. So I want to ask you, this ongoing violation of any kind of talks between Israel and Lebanon is currently being held in Rome. But what are the results of this? They are still fighting. Almost over 4,300 people have been killed in Lebanon, while at least 40 of them were Israelis that have been killed by Hezbollah. So that is the situation on the ground with Israel. How do you feel about Israel?
Israel doesn't care how many people are killed in Lebanon. It has been able to divert the world's attention from Gaza to Iran war. That's one success of Israel, that many people have to some extent forgot what happened in Gaza, and still happening. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed since the Gaza war. So Israel carried out the genocide. It didn't bother about that genocide. So now they're dealing with Hezbollah because Israel wants, from its perspective, a permanent solution in southern Lebanon. So Hezbollah is creating irritation for Israel. And I earlier said that Israel is not happy with the outcome of the war so far. So Israel will continue with this war in the first place. Secondly, since the election is pending, so Benjamin Netanyahu will try to show his people that Israel is gaining in the war. So attack on the southern Lebanon is a gain from the Netanyahu's perspective. So I don't see any solution very quickly in southern Lebanon, because the main issue is here Iran war. Then Gaza or Lebanon or even Houthi is just secondary issues, proxy wars. So once the main problem is resolved, then I think America, some other powers, maybe with the involvement of the United Nations and of course the Gulf countries, I think if they all join certain peace talks all together as a package, that may bring solution. But in that case, Israel will not agree to that process, because Israel is a isolated country in the Middle East and also a rogue country which doesn't bother about the peaceful solution to the crisis prevailing at the moment.
Right, and a rogue state, rogue country, as mentioned by Khaja Mainuddin, is very important to understand how we see, especially because in this last span of couple of months, we see Iran appearing to be the regional hegemon, the regional big brother in the corridor, fighting both Israel and the United States. Most of the Gulf nations do not retaliate in the face of Iran. yet they are feeling the brunt of the Iranian drone strikes in their capitals, at the airports, at the shopping malls, taking the lives of several in the Middle Eastern states. So it really, what Israel should be the big brother in the region with American support, it is really Iran who's taking the spotlight. And that is what I want to ask Norman. In order to have nuclear weapons in the Middle East, one must agree that they recognize Israel as a state under the Abraham Accords as per US administration and of course Donald Trump. Really, what kind of issues are these? Because nuclear energy it's a worldwide fact now. Almost every nation is coming to have developed nuclear energy programs, but especially when it comes to the Middle East, Iran is appearing to be the mightier force, as many analysts say. Would you agree, Norman? How do you see this rhetoric between Israel as well as Iran?
Yes, Iran is now part of the emerging markets of the world. Believe it or not, they are now part of the development of the world because of their ability to control trade and commerce. They're sitting at the point with Oman. They're going to make a decision on how to control that and get paid. They need money. This war, this conflict has decimated their infrastructure, their way of life, the way they make money. These are the factors which causes people to fight. They have to have a life. They have to have infrastructure, even though we do not agree with how they treat and how they manage and how the regime feels how they should manage their people. That is not business of anyone except the people involved in that area. The situation with Israel do not want Iran to flourish. Iran do not want Israel to exist. So we're going to have that internal conflict. Is basically that. The rest of the players in the region are now trying to manage a situation where they can coexist with the situation. Israel has a single focus mission. Iran mission is to ensure that Israel do not complete that. So they have to have assurances. Things are happening, things are moving. There will be a constant situation. Even after we have a peace deal, even we have the Strait is open, there will still have this internal conflict between the two. The United States has decided to support this single focus mission of Israel. So as long as that happens, we will have conflict in the region. Hopefully the states in the region can come to a decision with Iran, and most of them have already had a backdoor conversation agreement in place. It just had to be implemented, and the United States have to be basically taken out of the picture in terms of dealing within the region. Once that happens, you will see a more stable region, a more stable economy, and you will see things starting to change. The change is going to affect the United States presence, the impact of the United States. They want to stay present, relevant in that region. They want to have a strong impact on the region for obvious reason. It helps the economy, it helps everything else going on. But future will dictate that the internal, not the external, the internal people, the internal governments, they will dictate on how things work in that region. As a result of that, how things work in the world. So that is where we're right now. The issue's going to be resolved within the region, and that's going to affect how the rest of the world work right now, because we are so dependent on what that region produces for us.
Right. Very interesting statements. Once again, coming from Norman Floyd Barnes, really trying to sum up the Middle Eastern equation, Iran wanting to remove Israel and Israel having a greater plan, a greater Israel, including several states in the Middle East. It's time to take a short commercial break. Afterwards, we will be discussing why it was a very important day yesterday as the July uprising day. was established on 5th of August, just yesterday, as it's being observed at the United Nations as well as various nations from around the world. With that being stated, it's time to take a short commercial break.
Not enough action being taken to address the problem of fossil fuels.
What their plan initially is towards the Caribbean, a place that has been met with two types of disasters.
Bangladeshi students at the same level of opportunity internationally and domestically.
International Affairs. Watch every Sunday to Thursday at 2 p.m. only on SATV and SATV Digital. Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsul Alam Pantha.
I don't see an easy resolution to this because every slight deviation from the plan,
Opening an open war conflict with them.
testing nuclear missiles.
Russia's announcement of these supposedly successful testing.
Special and exclusive footage that is being played on SATVs.
Welcoming our viewers back on International Affairs. In its very last segment, we were, of course, recapping the events from around the world, those that include Donald Trump's decision-making, his administration, how we see the world in a changing atmosphere. I just want to have a very short comment from Norman as he's in his last minute. How you see the July uprising. What happened yesterday was that the ousted fascist regime leader was allowed to talk in New Delhi to concern the media, and because of that the Foreign Office here in Bangladesh had to issue the strongest worded letter towards our neighbor India. How do you feel about this? Someone captured. It's all very similar to how the Venezuelan leader was captured in the United States, as seen between Bangladesh and India. Just a very short comment from Norman.
Oddly or not, this is very, very typical how things are happening when we have leaders that has been moved and displaced, and they go to other places. They continue to want to lead. So I don't understand how how this works. Basically, you have left your area, now you're going to another area, but you still want to dictate terms and actions of the area. It really is counterproductive to me.
Right. As I take from Norman's Floyd Barnes' statements, really the environment yesterday all throughout the capital city was very silent, as people observed the morning of that day 2 years ago, as we've seen very silent neighborhoods that we see here in the capital. And I want to ask Khaja Mainuddin, very important to know why it is a national holiday observed in Bangladesh. 1,400 people have been killed as a result of the last genocidal regime, and this is why it's important. We see that the Bangladesh Consulate General in Istanbul was observing the July Mass Uprising Day with a solemn team commemorating the sacrifices of the martyrs, as well as the permanent mission of Bangladesh to the United Nations in New York, remembering the July Mass Uprising Day with a reception attended by permanent representatives, diplomats, senior UN officials, and representatives of other international organizations. Just to ask you how you feel about yesterday, as well as our foreign ministry writing a letter to New Delhi for allowing the deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's live media interaction in New Delhi in the Foreign Correspondents Club as mentioned. How do you feel about this? This is definitely inciting some kind of information, if not disinformation campaign from a foreign land as we know it.
Thank you very much. It's quite interesting. The August 5th, 2024 and the subsequent 2 days, 25 and 26, 2 anniversaries. July revolution was not a normal political event in not only for Bangladesh but also around the world. How many of such events took place in the recent times? We got inspiration from Sri Lanka, no doubt. The presidential palace was evacuated, fled. But then the nature of the July revolution in Bangladesh is different from some other incidents. And it was followed up by the Nepalese youngsters. And
Correct.
you see the cockroach movement in India, of course, to some extent inspired by the Bangladeshi youth's successful revolution in 2024. I think India should have been sensitive to the people of Bangladesh, because people of this country suffered more than 1.5 decades.
Right.
And India had a hand, unfortunately. So they should have felt sorry about it. Instead of so doing, it is instigating Dhaka.
Right.
We felt, and India conveyed time and again, that if there is an election and then elected government, they'll start renewing the relationship between the two countries. Is it the sample of renewing relationship within the two countries? Certainly not. And we have an extradition treaty in place, and she's not just a normal person.
Really coming to terms with Hamas.
Damage estimated between this entire issue.
President Trump is expected to hold bilateral talks.
Preserving biodiversity and tackling climate change.
We cannot protect the planet.
Coming up with that lame excuse. But yesterday's action, I would say action because it was at India's policy decision to allow Sheikh Hasina to hold this press conference, which she cannot do it when you have extradition treaty. And she was not given political asylum even. And Sheikh Hasina's status in India is not clear. You cannot say that how she is staying
This
there.
is definitely a topic of debate in Indian Parliament as well.
Even. So India fundamentally instigated. And if you look at the statements made by the Awami League, banned Awami League,
Before we negotiate peace.
Where is it?
also instigated the Indians that Bangladesh is going to be Pakistan. It's a provocative remark. And also he said Bangladesh is a failed state. Can I make insinuation that India is instigating Joy to say that Bangladesh is a failed state? I would conclude in that manner. And see this whole
It
thing.
appears as such.
Yeah, you see this whole thing in an opposite manner. And an Indian fugitive is here in Dhaka talking to you in this program. Should it have been welcomed in New Delhi?
Of course not.
What kind of reaction would they have in that case? It just
That'd
can
be
imagine.
outrageous, as we are outrageous. As Dhaka said, it is deeply regretting despite conveying its concerns in advance. So we have told them in advance that this shouldn't be that way, this shouldn't have happened. Really excellent discussion points from you on how we see the duplicity of the event of this kind of situation.
That's right.
As I end the program today, I want to thank you, Khaja Mainuddin, very important insights and developments into worldwide and national issues. I thank you for joining the program today. I also thank Norman Floyd Barnes all the way from Washington, D.C. to provide the perspectives of the common American folk from Washington as well. Before ending the program today, I just want to mention a historical date. Today is August 6th. It is also seen in history in 1945 as the day that the United States has dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima as a response to the attack on Pearl Harbor, and that is how the Second World War was shaped back in 1945. With that being stated, I am signing off on International Affairs. I will be with you all with the latest developments on Sunday next week. Up until then, goodbye and see you next week.
Faithful